to be better. Although the delay before it started on the morning show was a little longer than I expected, but here we are. We're good. We're golden.
Hey.
We've got Live Before Lock. It's your old pal Emac along with Chris Spags. And Spags, I'm turning this gig over to you. You run with it, my friend. I'm loading some ownership and stuff here into Cruncher. We just got another starting lineup. We have 6 games. So we can, let's see, last week at the pace we were going, you and I would have been done with 6 games in about 14 minutes. So,
So we're going to really luxuriate this week. But yes, as Emac mentioned, welcome to the Live Before Lock show. No deeper dives today, so we'll go game by game and really going to bask in the glow of what we have in front of us today. We do have 1 game that's already been postponed, so we are, as Emac mentioned, just down to a 6-gamer. It originally looked like it was going to be 7, but we do have 6 here. And yeah, use that promo code Live Before Lock first and foremost. I think on a slate like this where the options are tough and somewhat limited, you got to really pare it down somehow, and that is where the stuff that we have at Osmo.com helps. The lineup builder, Osmo's rankings, of course, and ownership projections. Those are all at your fingertips for half off your first month. So use that promo code Live Before Lock. Get in there now. All right, Emac. We're going to go game by game here, but now we kind of teased before we went on the air. Emac and I were talking a little bit about how we're viewing the slate, and I kind of want to get to the big debate up front, and maybe we'll just do it as part of this first game here. But the first game, the Brewers going against the Mets here. The Mets Syndergaard in particular is going to have a 3.5 implied run total against him. Going to be one of the highest owned pitchers on the slate industry-wide. For the Brewers, not much of note ownership-wise. I guess the highest owned guy will be Mike Moustakas, at least on DraftKings. Not a guy who, I mean, anybody's going to be going out of their way for probably, but he is a decent one-off play if you're trying to hedge against Syndergaard. And for the Mets, I don't mind the Mets today. Not much ownership on them. Going against Brandon Woodruff, not a bad spot. Yeah, I'm on board with Syndergaard, but there is a pitcher I like substantially more. Emac, what are you thinking here?
I still stand similarly to where we were when Jake and I discussed this slate ad nauseum. Jake and I usually are relatively quick. It took us an hour and 50 minutes to go through the whole slate today. So we did some exfoliating, some luxuriating. There was time in the mud room. So we were at the spa all freaking day. But I'm still in a similar spot here in that I am utilizing the leverage tonight, and I am not making a stand on any one particular pitcher. Now, this morning, or in the main slate that went off at 2 o'clock, or the afternoon slate, which was relatively robust for Saturday at 7 games, I had, I think I ended up with like 60% Strasburg, 60% Price, and then I had a bunch of Happ and a bunch of what's his name, Derek Holland. So I was concentrated. When I had like 5 total pitchers, and I had to add like 5% Morton and 5% somebody else, so my crunches would run just so I'd have enough. But here I'm gonna roll with probably about 20% of everybody and see what happens. I haven't started running the crunches. We're still waiting on a lineup or 2 here, but it seems to be getting me where I want to go. Now, the one thing we did caution this morning is because I was liking a lot of the higher end pitchers, I wasn't getting as many 3, 4, 5, 6 or 1, 2, 3, 4 type stacks. I was getting a lot of 7 hitters, 6 hitters, etc. So when you're going in heavy on these pitchers, and the optimizer is going to give you as many players from each team as you ask it to. But it's not going to be the players you're thinking you're getting, or it may be if you're cognizant of that one. But that one you need to be kind of careful on. And I run half my lineups 4-4 and half of my lineups 5-3 from that standpoint. So we'll see what happens. But for me, my answer on most of these guys for the pitching is I'm not really going to be taking a strong spot. And normally I have, my 3 or 4 guys that I'm good with, be it I'm building around these SP2s, or here's the 2 top end guys I'm looking for, or I want this particular pairing, etc. So it feels to me like something where I normally don't talk about, yes, I'm just really going to have a smattering of everyone. So I want to call that out up front just so I don't sound like a broken record here.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you're talking about the high price guys. The choice is really, I mean, at least for me on paper, going to be between Syndergaard and Kershaw. I like Syndergaard, and I think it's a good spot for him. I think there's a lot of good amount of strikeouts on this lineup, actually not much above league average, and not as good as it could be compared to how they've struck out on the year versus right-hand pitching. I have no issue with Syndergaard. I think, though, that Kershaw's just in the spot of, his year pretty much. His pitch count's been coming up. He's been was over 90 last time out. Swinging strike stuff has been really good to start the year. 13.1% rate there, 38.5% chase rate. Going against the Pirates team, the lineup they're rolling out has a 30.3% aggregate strikeout rate. Then going against the Brewers, have a 22.3% one, also have a lot more power. I just don't see it being a bad spot for Kershaw, whereas I could see a few ways it goes south for Syndergaard. So I'd rather go to Kershaw. I think, the fact that Syndergaard could throw more pitches maybe gives him a little bit of a feather in his cap, but that's my decision. I have a very, very strong Kershaw. I'm actually above the field on Kershaw on DraftKings, which is hard to do because he's going to be very highly owned.
Okay. And again, I haven't pulled in all the ownership. Now, if we're looking kind of, and so this is one of those random ones where we just have six games. I looked ahead at the schedule. We're going to have more 8 and 9 and 7 gamers, etc. But since this start time is still an hour from right now, this will give us a chance for those that didn't catch the DFS strategy show, which we do put out on podcast form. And that's one of the things I recommend listening to, even if you're at work or whatever and you're not listening to it live. We'll kind of go down and talk, wait for it, more strategy and different approaches, and that can be carried on to future slates than what we're looking at for any one day in particular here. And one of the things that get to the right filter here. One of the things that is always kind of intriguing is just where are you ranking your pitchers within that day's slate? And for me, at 10,200, we're getting Kershaw. We should get 90 pitches. I don't think he'll go over 95, but in his 2 starts, he's gone 84, and then last start was 92. So that feels relatively comfortable. On a pitch per dollar, we're getting a reasonable price here. We just need to understand this isn't Clayton Kershaw, multiple Cy Young Award winner. This is Clayton Kershaw, arguably the best pitcher on the slate. We'll have to see what happens, when we're out there in the game. The Pirates don't strike out a ton, but they have 3 guys that strike out a fair amount in their lineup. Now, one of them's Young Ho Kang, and he's one of the guys I like against Kershaw. He's got a 23 at-bat sample size from the beginning of last season because he was off in his home country of South Korea dealing with some off-the-field penalties that he suffered for drinking and driving. So kids, don't do that at home. I'm assuming they may... Do they not have Uber? Come on, I thought they'd have Uber everywhere.
Sure they do, and yeah, you would think you'd have enough money to do that, but sometimes logic doesn't prevail, I guess there.
Exactly, and then Francisco Cervelli, he's one of the guys with the higher strikeout rate, but that's usually not his main profile. Now he walks a ton. He walks at 16% over his last 120 at bats against lefties. Strikes out at 25%. So those are the 2 guys I kind of like paired together. And I'm not against Josh Bell here, but the rest of the lineup, you're right, it's not that intimidating. Frazier, horrible against lefties. The Milkman, his best days are well behind him. Oh, good God. Do I get to set Turd Ferguson? No, it's Brian Reynolds, not Burt Reynolds. It's Brian Reynolds coming in at a super cheap price there. But what's the book on him? And then we're looking at Tucker and Reyes. Now, Tucker is if I remember reading his blurb, he's actually pretty fast. So stolen bases are in play for him, but I don't know, that happens tonight, but that's something to think about. But you're right, it's not that intimidating of a lineup. So now with that proper context, this isn't, Kershaw with, of old, but it's a darn good pitcher. We hopefully the kinks are worked out here, and I can see where you're getting the love for him. This is where I don't know what I'm going to end up doing, and I'm excited to get the rest of the lineups in here and start doing some crunches here.
Yeah, so I mean, for me too, the Pirates too versus left-hand pitching on the year, they're the worst team on the slate in pretty much every category. On base percentage of 275, an ISO of 101, strikeout rate, which is actually the same as this current lineup, 30.3%, WRC plus of 40, batting average of 229. So those are all versus left-hand pitching for the Pirates. Again, the worst on the slate in every category. Vegas total 2.9, the lowest on the slate by a pretty decent margin. Syndergaard is number 2 with 3.5 implied runs against him. So we're talking about a pretty big difference. And the money line too for Kershaw, minus 210. And, to me, that's pretty significant because I think that means you're expecting him to go deep. You're expecting him to have success. So if we're playing the Vegas total game, and that is something I'll talk about on every live stream because honestly, it's been the best thing I've done for myself this year. Yesterday, Jared Eichhoff was a guy who Jake and I talked about in Live Before Lock. He ended up outscoring Max Scherzer, and he was the number 2 pitcher according to the money line on the slate. Nobody talked about him, and I didn't really get why. It was another situation with a good aggregate K lineup across from him, a team without a lot of danger. and a guy who's been missing bats. And I think that's what I'm seeing here. So I'm willing to pay the price and a little bit less risk, I think, too, than with Syndergaard.
Was there a little weather for Eichhoff last night? Was that his?
It was rainy, but I don't think that helps him in any way meaningfully.
Right. No, more just meaning I think perhaps that suppressed some of the interest on him because there was only one game ended up getting postponed, and that was prior to lock, but there were still 3 games that were questionable. One was the Nationals, but that was only going to be the first couple innings where it was a problem. And then, but I had I played it differently last night, and I lost my ass because I X'd out all the weather games except for Scherzer's. And
what
literally had no players from those games. None, Chris. That was not the best decision because I had no eye cough whatsoever. So
one thing that might come in handy, EMAC, for future reference, because it is actually what put me on it more so, was our postponement risk thing on the projections that we have on Osmo.com. And again, use that promo code live before lock. Every day, Alex updates those as he goes, and his dad is meteorologist. I don't know that gives you an official degree in meteorology, but he's taken the best lessons he can and is applying to DFS about as well as anybody who isn't a fully accredited weatherman out there. And if you follow at Osmo Weather, we're also on that every day, or Alex is on that every day updating weather with stuff. But postponement risk in there, it was 0 for the entire day for Philly, and that was dead on. There was some risk for Boston that ended up getting postponed for the Mets game, obviously, that we now have on today's slate. That was also postponed. So that's been a helpful guide for me, where if it's been 0 and it's not going up, I'm okay playing those guys. And yeah, that was the case yesterday, but no weather concerns on today's slate, thankfully, other than the game we lost already.
Yeah, and that, we had some people snipping and sniping because we've started the Osmo Weather Twitter account, and you were on the call. We had the team call, and Alex said, "Hey, you know what? I think I'm going to start doing this." We're like, oh, "Okay, that seems a little crazy." He's like, "Well, my dad's actually a meteorologist." He goes, "We talk about it all the time." And then in chat, people are like, "Oh, just because my dad's a doctor doesn't make me a doctor." Well, no shit. But
also, your dad's not a doctor.
No, yeah. So I'm not a salesman, but you know what? My whole family is, and that's all. So I knew exactly what to do and how to do it, and yada, all the tricks and all this stuff. It doesn't mean I want to do it, but if I need to be, I can be pretty persuasive. And it's one of those things. It's like, if you've been around it a lot, Alex is like the rest of us, or most of us, a nerd. So weather is fascinating. This was pre fantasy sports, internet, etc. when he was growing up as a kid. So if he was anything like me, he loved the prognostication, figure stuff out, look at variables. And I think of all the stupid things games I invented, to play with my friends and stuff based on the newspaper and betting odds and just little things we would do, when I was 10. So this was like, 1982. And I'm sure, so if you've got this insatiable thing, analysis that will just never turn off in your brain, which I know Alex has, you're going to pick up stuff like that. It's right in your wheelhouse, because you have to take the sciences in class. And I remember 7th grade, my favorite thing was we spent 2 months just nothing but weather and learning about cloud types and humidity and all this crap. So he had that right at his disposal. I'm just not very good at math and science. So that's why I'm not a weatherman. But I thought that was something that was in the outcome for me, but it was just like, I can't do all this science because.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Alex, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think from what he said, it's not that he necessarily even had to dedicate so much to it. It's actually a pretty simple thing, at least in terms of like what your local weatherman is doing. Like a high level meteorologist who's projecting like very high level things requires a bit more depth. For the most part, though, it's just like a situation where you just need to know the color of the clouds and how it's going and what that usually means. And that's something that Alex has spent the time learning. So I think it's a good resource, and it's been pretty spot on so far. So, I'm not, as much as I'd like to shill for just because that's my job, I don't shill things I don't believe in. And that is something we've done a really good job with.
No, and he wouldn't put something out there where everybody's going to be there and he knows he's going to take heat. Because look at what happens with the other guys that are doing this. They just get people. I mean, all you're doing is welcoming criticism. So if he didn't think he was going to be right a lot more often than he was going to be wrong, he wouldn't be putting this out there. So just saying, this isn't a frivolous, me sitting here with weather.com future cast on my phone trying to figure out what the hell's going to happen.
Yeah, so go follow at Awesome Weather on Twitter if you want to get that information right there. Set the notifications on it. Honestly, it's not tweeting a bunch, but when it does, it's usually helpful information, including some actual breakdowns of what we're seeing on the radar. So go check that out at Awesome Weather on Twitter. All right, Emac, let's close this game out. So
Okay.
the Milwaukee side, anybody you're stacking against Syndergaard to hedge?
All right. Back to that one. Let me reset my filters here because the answer is yes. And I just want to see what the lineup is. So Yelich is the one thing we want to point out with him. High stolen base opportunities against Noah Syndergaard and systematically against the Mets in general. Yelich had 2 stolen bases last night. He's got 5 on the season. He's tied with Bellinger, who caught him last night with home runs. But he's got 13 home runs and 5 steals on the year. That's pretty cool. I like him a fair amount as a one-off or part of a stack. But we get the lefties here. And these guys are all good hitters. Moustakas, Yasmani Grandal, and Shaw, and then Thames when he's healthy is he's just fine. If you look at the historical numbers for Syndergaard and you start pulling in last year's data, you see a lot of phenomenal stuff. I mean, he is a good pitcher. So for me, this is more of I'm not taking a ton of guys against him. My guess is I'll probably have about 10%. And I'm running 2 stacks per team. So that really means of 5% of my total stacks are going to be, or I'm saying that incorrectly, but I'll have a nice little sampling here of these key guys. But I suspect once I get this stuff loaded in, I'm going to have to tell it specifically to Crunch for that thing, because this is one of those, you're hoping it goes sideways for Syndergaard. It very well may not, but it's not an easy opportunity. And this is where we're going to start really playing with the strategy against the popularity of the different players, what we're seeing on the different stacks, etc. But for me, it'd be those lefties. Ideally, 2 through 5 would be the ones that I would focus on.
Yeah, I think that's a fair approach. I mean, there are some cheap guys here. I do have a little bit of Arcia. I do have a little bit of Gamel, even though that's not the most appealing spot. Like you mentioned with your crunches, when you're trying to get some of the higher price pitchers in there, you are going to have to make some stands with cheap guys sometimes. And I don't hate them. Like certainly not the best projected guys, but we're in a situation anyway where you're going against the grain. If you're going against Syndergaard, Syndergaard is the best pitcher on the slate. So I think that's totally a fine situation to go to those guys, because really any of these guys having a strong day or a particularly strong day would be a bit of a surprise. Syndergaard does limit damage pretty well. But yeah, I think that's about right. How about the Mets side? Brandon Woodruff, to me, not a guy I'm trying to get to. Pretty bad versus lefties in particular. Not bad versus righties, but I think there's enough lefties in this lineup can cause us some trouble. I don't mind Mets stacks here, at least a little bit, because they're not terribly priced and they help, I guess, sort of fit some things. Any Mets for you or any Woodruff?
So the problem is I'm getting a lot of Woodruff. And by a lot I mean more than at least what this morning's were with the fields. Now we have all the lineups in, and we just got let's see, the scoring projections just updated. I suspect we'll see one last popularity update between now and lock, but to account for all the lineups coming in and other news and other variables, etc. But the issue is I'm coming in, at least with my placeholder, at 40% Woodruff on DraftKings, and we have him at 27%. That part makes me a little nervous. But again, as I said, I'm going to be doing quite a few kind of the peanut butter approach here, spreading it all relatively equally with the pitching. I'm going to do some mixing and matching with my stacks. And I'm really hoping I can get 5 or 10% of my teams to kind of break through with the right combination, and hopefully get myself up well above the min cash line. This is when you're doing stuff like this and spreading things out so much, you don't generally have as much opportunity to take something down, and you won't be. And by taking something down, I mean, you're not going to see peppering the leaderboard with your stuff because you're spread out too much. But if something breaks free from me tonight, I'm hoping for like a 3x night. And this is, I'll break this type of approach out more often on the short slates, like the 4 gamers and the 3 gamers. I'm doing it on the 6 gamer again because I don't feel confident taking a stand anywhere like I did on the earlier slate, where I was fired up to get Kepler and Minnesota and a couple other teams. This one, I don't know. I'm having a fair amount of we'll get to them, but Mike Minor and Mike Leake. But I'm also going with the offenses against them because I just don't have a strong read on this slate, and that's making me a little bit nervous. But we know that we have a couple 200 to 240 playable slates every year during baseball of 5 games or more. this is one of those where I'm going this route. It's not I maybe do this again, like I said, once or twice a week. So it's not a
Yeah.
common occurrence for me, but it's one I haven't been on air while I've been doing that I could talk about. And this is where you guys have heard how Jake does it, and Lofty to a lesser extent. Adam in particular does this a fair amount. Josh does this a fair amount. So this is just sort of my first foray into this kind of thing. So I'm talking about it a lot because I want you guys to understand what I'm looking at and what I'm seeing and how I'm approaching it, because we're big on transparency here at Osmo. So I just want you to know. And by the way, I lost all 3 of the sports I played last night. I had a horrible night last night. So you don't win every time. But I'm doing well on NHL playoffs. So check out the Jake Hari content, and his projections have been phenomenal.
Yeah, I was fine last night. Yeah, I think your approach is right. And Fast said he's talked about this before too, where he said in general, the one edge you have is playing more on nights where you feel like there is an edge and where you have a view on things, and playing less on nights where you feel like maybe there's less of an obvious edge. And I think this is one of those slates. I mean, we talked about it before we came on the air. Like, I like some of the pitching, the hitting, I like some of as well, but it overall doesn't gel super well for me. I like getting a cheaper pitcher in there who I think has upside, who has some sort of data backing him, whether it's like strikeout numbers or a Vegas total or whatever. Nobody who really fits that criteria for me. So I think it is sort of a day, perhaps to mitigate risk. And I think following some of the trends and deviating in a few spots, probably always a wise approach for GPPs in general. But I think for today in particular, I think it's not the worst approach. Let's go into the second game here. We got the Angels going against the Royals. The Angels implied for 4.5 runs. The Royals also implied for 4.5 runs. Going to be some ownership here. Oh, wait, I just shrunk my screen. There we go. All right. Going to be some ownership here on the top 3 for the Angels in particular. Some guys have some ownership throughout the Royals as well. Jamie Barria, also the projected long reliever. I believe the projected opener is Bedrosian or whatever, but that's worthless because he's only pitching 1 inning. So please don't play him unless it's something really great stack-wise that gets you there. But in general, I would say not a guy to play. Barria, I don't like very much, but I have a little bit of. Jorge Lopez, I also don't like, but I have a little bit of. Again, not the best spot in the world, but what do you have the most of here, Emac?
For me, it's going to be the hitters. Now, let's start off here with Jorge Lopez. So he is. Oops, that's because I have my filters just on this year. Let me go back to last year and this year. So he's got some issues with lefties. So this is over, 350 or so plate appearances, 200 against lefties, 166 against righties. So somewhat of a sample size, but he has a bit of a track record as well. So he's about league average for strikeouts, 8.6 walks per game. The strikeouts are 18.5%. That's not great. This particular iteration of the Angels does not strike out. Their 3 highest guys are Brian Goodwin. Oh, hey. Revenge at 27% over his last 200 lefty-righty matchups. Justin Bour, 25% against his last 400 lefty-righty matchups. And then Cole Calhoun. But remember, Cole Calhoun sort of has changed his approach after just a horrid season last year. Went down to the minors for 5 or 6 games, came back up. At least his power is up there. His contact just hasn't been great. He's leading off. So if anybody's going to give strikeouts to Lopez, it's going to be those 3. Then you got Andrelton Simmons, 9%. Mike Trout, 17%. Pujols, of all people, 11%. Jonathan Lucroy, 12%. Tommy La Stella, 11%. There's not a lot of upside here for Lopez. So while I said I'm doing a peanut butter approach, Lopez and Jaime Barria are going to be in that 5 to 10% at most. And that's just so my stacks will work for my other team. So I'm not looking a lot to either of these guys. But in particular, Calhoun, Trout, Bour are my 3 favorites. I hate giving up the first base position to Pujols, but what you'll see a lot of times when you have sluggers start to decline throughout their career, they get a little, the bat speed just isn't quite there. It's odd. They start to do a little bit better against righties than they do lefties, which is kind of funny and not quite as intuitive as you would seen. But this, you're seeing it with Miguel Cabrera. We're seeing it with Pujols. If you go down the litany of guys in that nature, you kind of see that they start to do a little bit. The regression against righties is not as quick as it is against lefties for some of these more power-based hitters like Pujols.
Oh, we're getting some weird spam in the YouTube chat. Cost of living rises together with excessive bureaucracy equals senators bribe illegals with corrupt ninth court. What the hell is that? All right, buddy.
Well, if you want to talk about that stuff, just make sense. Just make sense.
Weirdest-
A word salad doesn't tell you. You could have a point, but the word salad's not helping you there.
What is going on? All right. Well, that was the strangest spam I've seen in this chat. Yeah, I think your takes. Sorry, that was very distracting and confusing. The Illuminati in full play today here on Live Before Lock on a Saturday. I think the Angels stack is interesting. I think the guys you mentioned for the most part, I agree. Pujols actually has been hitting well, at least from a power perspective to start the year. Batting average still not great, but his isolated power is trickling back up, and maybe it'll come back down compared to last year. But I think there have been some signs of life for him this year. I don't hate it. I'd prefer to go to Bohr, but I mean, Bohr actually has been worse than Pujols on the year. So, concerns with both guys in some way, but I don't mind it. I do like the bottom of the order a little bit more because I think these guys have some okay potential. Rengifo is a guy who can get pinch hit for, so that's not the best, but I think he's been hitting well so far. Very, very limited sample size, but I think it's been encouraging for him in terms of a 9-hole hitter who's really not that great price. But if you do with that stack, you can open up a lot of things. So if the bottom half happens to go off versus Lopez, I think that's an okay spot. And the Royals for me too, it's sort of hard to love anybody there. I think Whit Merrifield's okay. I'm more inclined to go one-offs there than full stacks. And Ryan O'Hearn too has been really bad this year, which makes me worry a little bit. His numbers last year may have been a bit of an aberration, all the power he had. But not much for the Royals for me. So let's do home run picks, Mac. We are at the halfway point. I'll be honest, yesterday really was a soul-crushing pick for me. I had Vlad Guerrero, of obviously a very popular play. The two warning track home runs he had, or rather near home runs, could not have been closer. And that really hurt me, EMAC. And I would like to have been able to pick him again today, but unfortunately, we don't have access. So I'll let you pick first.
All right. Well, we did just for fun picks today, so I already burned my good one because I went with Kepler. I forget who Jake went with. Darn it. But I am going to go with Joey Gallo against Mike Leake. Mike Leake generally stays around the strike zone, while his strikeouts have ticked up lately. It's just there's going to be a decent chance for Gallo to get his pitch. Now, tougher park there in T-Mobile, so not the most friendly matchup, but he's the guy I'm going to go with today.
All right, I'm going to go with David Peralta going against Yu Darvish. I think Yu's actually an interesting spot because he does get good strikeouts or good strikeout stuff rather. And this team, I mean, there's not a ton of strikeouts in the lineup, but there are some spots you can get there. I think these guys, they've been hitting really well on the year. Maybe due to cool down a little bit, but Peralta's still going back to last year. The numbers grayed out really well. Going against right-hand pitching for him. He's got a 320 batting average, 374 on base percentage, 252 ISO. All that checks out well. 4.9% home run rate. So I'm going to take David Peralta. So there we go. Let's go on to this game then. Let's talk about this one because this is the one with the highest total on the board. We can come back to the Colorado game. This one with the Cubs and the Diamondbacks. Cubs get 5.1 implied runs in their favor. Arizona getting 5.4 implied runs in their favor. Yu Darvish, not going to have any ownership on him. Zach Godley, not going to have any on him, really. I think you can make an argument to go to Yu as a leverage play against the field because he has been striking out guys pretty well, but also been giving up a ton of walks, a ton of hits, or not a ton of hits, a ton of walks, though, for sure, and a good amount of hits. And the home run rate for the year, pretty bad, 5.7% home run rate, which would be one of the lower ones on the slate so far in 2019. I like both sides here to stack up. I do like a little bit of Yu Darvish if you can afford him. He's pretty high priced, though, given the total against him and how he's just been this year. Some bright sides, a lot of downsides. What are you getting the most of, Mac?
The offense here on both sides. The roof, let me just double check, but as of this morning, it was going to be open. Let's see, Chase Field roof status, which takes me to the link that I have. And it is open. It's going to be closed tomorrow, but open today, and it is going to be toasty. Remember, this is 5:12 local time for first pitch. Let me get up to that weather page there. And it is going to be 98 degrees at first pitch. That's something like be a name for a band or something.
I was going to say, you're the hottest hits of 1997 as well.
There we go. I don't even know who. Oh, wait, was that the Nick Lachey one?
Yep, it was.
Okay.
Nick Lachey and his brother Drew and some other guy who did not do much with his life.
in any event, it's going to be a hard pass for me on these pitchers. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm running a crunch, so we'll see what happens. But here's where I set my pitching at, because I want to see who's going to hit the cap, and then I'm going to start flexing and taking stuff away. So I went 25% with all of the popular pitchers, which would be Syndergaard, Kershaw, Woodruff, Minor, Fulte, and Mike Leake, and then I went 10% with everybody else, because you've got Gray going against Atlanta. I don't want any of that. I'll take 10% of either of these guys just because I don't want to go. I don't feel strong enough to put that anywhere else, so I'm getting that cap, and then I'm getting capped at 10% for Musgrove and Baria, and then Darvish as well, and then Lopez is coming in at 2%. So I'm probably, now's where I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to creep up a little bit here with Syndergaard, a little bit more with Kershaw. Woodruff, I had him at 40. I'll probably go up just a little bit more, and then that will be where I ride or die at this point. And then I'm going to run my 4-4s and my 5-3s and see what happens. Again, this is an approach I don't do a lot. Now, let's talk about some of these batters. I think Daniel Descalso leading off is outstanding in this one. He's 2,900 on FanDuel, 41 on DK, 85 on Fantasy Draft, and 15 on Yahoo. I like the fact that he's at the top of the lineup. He should see 5 at-bats. That's important.
Revenge game too. Don't forget that. The important narrative.
Oh, excellent point. That hadn't even occurred to me, because I'm just used to him being on Arizona. So there you go with that. You've got in my all-day slate.
You know what? Actually, my bad. I mixed it up. My bad. You know what? That's not a revenge game. I was like, wait, is he on the Cubs? I misread my chart. My bad.
No, he is on the Cubs.
Oh, yes. Okay, never mind. Yes, that's a revenge game from last year then. Okay, so I'm not an idiot. Thank you.
No. You're totally right there. Totally right. But on my all-day slate, I got a bunch of Descalso, Bryant, Rizzo, and Javi Baez. So I suspect that I'm going to go there as well. Let's see. David, whatever the hell his last name is, we'll call it Bote, or is it Bot?
Yeah, so I thought it was Bote, and then Jake was like, it's Bodie. And
I think it's Bodie, like Bodie Zephyr from oh shit, what was that movie with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze?
Oh, Point Break.
Point Break, yeah. I think that's how I thought it was, even though it's a T. I think it's Bodie, but I'm not 100% sure.
I feel like it should be Bote, but he's super white, so it's probably not. There's no accent on the E, so I don't know. I like Bote though; it gives him a little flair.
Yeah, but FanDuel, he's stellar at 2,800. He is 42 on DK, but he does have second base, third base eligibility, which gets him into more lineups. And then Yahoo, he's nice at 11. So I wasn't getting much of him at all on my earlier stacks, but he would be a guy if you start running. He could be the guy that comes in as a one-off when you're doing 4-4s or 5-3s. You still got to get one guy floating around there. And because he's at 2 positions, I'm guessing he'll be on a reasonable number of lineups. Let's see. I did my first 100 here. I'm going to bump that to 150. I'm only getting him at 4%, but the field's at 8. So, but that's kind of where my love on this team backs off. I'm not really a fan of Jason Hayward. Schwarber, I think, is kind of interesting just because he has solid numbers. He's batting 8th, and a lot of people are not going to want that in their stacks. And I am getting 20% of Schwarber right now, and he is on he's 13% on the field. So
yeah. Wait, do you have the most recent ownership, or do I not have it? Because I have him as 18 on DK.
I have one from what I thought was 15 minutes ago. But
yeah, yours might be more recent then. Okay. Yeah, I missed the last one. That's why. All right.
I have the most recent one.
Yeah, so I'm with you on most of that. I do like Hayward a little bit. I think that he goes well when you're going with Baez and maybe some Bodie or Bote. If you want to give him some class. Taylor Davis, too. I think he's cheap enough on DraftKings where he makes some lineups work. I mean, not a ton of a track record in the majors so far, but he is a player who's here. And the hope, I think, for him is that he would rise along with the tide if they are going to put up some runs here versus Zach Godley. And Godley has been pretty bad to start the year, given a really bad xFIP, 5.44, giving up a good amount of hits. I mean, the swinging strike rate numbers, chase rate numbers are mostly the same. Yeah, for the most part, I don't mind the Cubs here. The Arizona side, I would say, more appealing to me, and I think there are some different ways you can go here with them. I have a good amount of Arizona today just because you has been giving it up just everywhere. So what are the Arizona players you like the most?
Let's see here. From Arizona, definitely Peralta. I am fine with Escobar. I don't mind Adam Jones. He's adequate in same-handed matchups, but he's on the downside of his career, but he is batting 4th. and ideally he should come up with at least somebody on between Escobar and Peralta. And then Walker is someone that I don't have a good read on him yet, so I can't ever tell if he feels overpriced, but he's got some decent numbers and decent production. It's a relatively small sample size, just 90 at bats in righty situations going back to last season, but he's been, 300 ISO is pretty impressive. Again, 90 at bats. I think that's going to be more like a 220, but that's still in that elite range. So I don't mind him. I'm not happy with the last three guys in the lineup with Marte, Ahmed, and J.R. Murphy or John Ryan Murphy. So.
Yeah, I think the only reason to go to those guys is to hopefully get off of a chalkier path and then hope that maybe those guys will hit a little better in the bottom of the order. But I agree, they're less appealing than the top five. Walker, I'm with you on it. I think he's an interesting guy to not have in a stack, but he's actually going to be pretty low owned. It seems like people aren't going to go to 5-man stacks much here, maybe more of a 2-man or various 3-man types. Walker strikes out a lot, and I think that gives me some pause going against you, because you has been missing bats. 12.5% swing strike rate on the year so far this season, rather, is a pretty good number to go against. And if Walker's striking out 36.7% of the time, so just under 37%, a lot of strikeouts for Walker. So a ton of power, but also a decent shot. He just strikes out a bunch today. So I don't mind him, but I think the field's 5% maybe feels a little low, given how much the stack is going to be owned and just the potential they have. And honestly, the fact that there'll probably be guys on base for him, so at least have a shot to drive some people in. So I think that all kind of bodes well for Walker. But yeah, there's a lot of risk to him, and I agree for the most part with your picks. I think the bottom three, just looking at it again, yeah, the prices are nice, but besides that, there's not a lot of appeal to those guys. Let's go back here to the Colorado Atlanta game. Our boy Sean V in the chat touting up Mr. John Gray a lot. Apparently a very strong PVB performance for him if we're going to flip it the other way, going against Atlanta. And Gray, a little bit interesting here. The swinging strike rate's been solid on the year. Numbers perhaps haven't backed out as well as they could for him, but it's a decent spot. I think, so EMAC, this might be something you know better than I do. 76-degree weather in Atlanta today. Seems like it's on the way up, and maybe a little humidity starting to brew there. Would you say this is a more positive hitting environment now that we're getting into the mid to high 70s?
No. Just because the humidity is only at 30% today. Really, humidity needs to be at 55, 60% before it really starts affecting things. So this would actually be a very pleasant day in Atlanta. We'll see what we're going to see again as we get into July, and particularly mid-July through August, is you're going to have those pop-up shower chances constantly in Atlanta all around the stadium. And if it comes up over it, it's going to be a problem. Otherwise, it's just going to be wicked 70, 80% humidity, 90 degrees. That's the home run weather. This isn't bad, but this isn't enough to make me go running to the hitters here. I think they're both solid pitchers. I think it's a daunting task here for Gray. I just wanted to, now out of curiosity, I want to see what his performance has been against Atlanta, because he really only plays them, a couple times a year at most, because they're not in the same. So he's got 66 at-bats. He has allowed 2 extra base hits. So he has a 182 average against. So yeah, that's nice. But 66 at-bats is not much, especially when you start throwing in, let's see, 2 of them went to Teheran, 1 to McCann, so that's really nothing. Ender Enciarte has 16. Yeah, I'm not going to go by that. None of these guys have seen him more than 16 times, and that's Enciarte. It's not enough of a sample size. We like Gray out of Colorado, but I really, really don't want to take people against Atlanta just as a general rule, because they have so many competent hitters on their lineup, and they have the luxury of bringing in Johan Camargo where they need him. He'll be all over the lineup tonight. He's batting second with the Donaldson's not in the lineup. That's why he's up there. With the addition of
the lineup a little more appealing, or a little bit less appealing for John Gray. There's not a lot of strikeouts. No, really, the only guy above league average in terms of strikeouts in that lineup right now is Acuna. Yeah,
and do you really want to say, I don't want to, Acuna is a strikeout guy? Not really. When you consider the upside that comes. He's also decent at taking walks. He just hits the ball goddamn hard is what he does.
He does.
So, but yeah, I can't advocate Gray. So I've got Gray capped at 10%. I've gone back in and I've put Fulte at 25%. Now, the reason I'm doing that with Fulte is the weighted runs created plus, which is the a scoring efficiency metric. It's an advanced metric that neutralizes park factors. So Jake and I talked a lot about this on the show this morning, but it's a nice 69, as they say, for the Rockies. But what that means is they are scoring 30% less efficiently than league average against righties in the same situations and conditions. That's not good. It's the fourth lowest in the league. So that's one thing we always want to be cognizant of when we're looking at the Rockies. When they are away from Coors Field, it skews a lot of stuff. So if you're sitting there looking at their isolated power, their WOBA, all that stuff, that's not tamped down. That's not normalized for hitting in Coors Field for half their games. So you want to be careful with that, and you want to look at them as a team. Are their guys pretty good? Yeah, I mean, Blackman is solid. Story has a much better performance track record against righties than I had thought. That was one of the things that surprised me this year. I think because he was hurt so much last year, I'd kind of forgotten that. I mean, we love him against lefties, but holy hell, he's let's see, his last 550 at bats against righties, 360 WOBA, 240 isolated power. Yeah, that's a leads. You've got Daniel Murphy, who's back off the disabled list after he had a fractured finger. So he's back, but he gets the lefty-righty matchup. He's no stranger to going against former AL East pitchers, since he spent the bulk of his career with the Mets and the Nationals. So but outside of him, I'm not that scared. Dahl doesn't have enough of a track record. He's a good hitter, but he's been hurt so darn much. This is one where I'm willing to go a little higher on Fulte, just because McMahon, Tapia, Walters. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of lefties. We don't like lefties against Fultes, but these guys are not terrifying lefties outside of Blackman, who is arguably top 5 in the league, and then a healthy Daniel Murphy would be top 5 in the league. Those guys would be right up there with Bryce Harper, Christian Yelich, etc. From the guys that you're like, I'll take him against anybody. But the team as a whole, I'm not that concerned about outside of Coors Field. If this was in Coors Field, we'd be talking a lot more about those lefties and how this could be a good spot because there are so many of them. But I'm not gonna go after Colorado, but I'm not taking a ton of Fulte either. But he'll be my 7th on pitcher. So.
Okay. So yeah, I don't mind going against Fulte. He's coming off of some rehab starts. Somebody in the chat has mentioned it, and I just lost who it was, but Shannon Lambert saying not good in Fulte. First game back, and he wasn't good in his 4 rehab starts. I think that's sort of how I feel as well. His stuff last year was good, but I don't love taking a guy coming back after being out, to be honest. And I think I did see that he had poor numbers in his rehab starts, but I didn't see what the actual numbers were. So I can't really say to that part as much, but I saw that he has been pitching well. And coming off an injury, that did scare me off a little bit. So I was a little more inclined to go to a few one-off guys here, because I do think there is some left-handed hitting opportunity for those guys. Like David Dahl interests me. Murphy a little bit, but Blackman and Dahl specifically, I think, are interesting one-off plays here. Fulte, a little bit under league average in terms of home runs versus lefties, but if you're downgrading him because of injury and perhaps just being a little rusty from not, being out in the majors for a while now, I think maybe you can expect one of these guys to hit a home run off them. And that's just the thing Fulte, I think, has always been the downside of him, is he'll have some great stuff and he'll have moments of just complete brain fartery. And I think that's what I would be hoping for here. But not one I'm going to a ton. But I definitely didn't get to Fulte much at all, because I think I have some concerns about him. I just want to see him do it one time in the majors.
All right, here are his 4 rehab starts. He was with the Gwinnett Stripers. So his first, let's see, where's the numbers pitched? So his first, this is where it's fun. His first outing, he went 5 innings, 56 pitches. He had no hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. His second one, he went 61. He gave up 2 runs, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. His third one got a little bit tougher there, but he went 85 pitches, so he probably overextended himself to see where he could end up. He had 5 strikeouts again, but 4 walks, 4 earned runs. And then the last one, the Durham Bulls, they got to him. Crash Davis inspired them. They had 6 earned runs. He only got 2 strikeouts. But the nice thing to see is he did have 89 pitches. So he went 5 1/3 there. So I'm okay with it. To me, it shows the progression in pitch count from 56 to 61 to 85 to 89. I figure he'll be in the 85-ish range tonight. I'm still okay with that. Is he going to be dominant and shut him down and get 7 strikeouts? No. What am I hoping for? A quality start.
Okay. Yeah. And on FanDuel, that would certainly be a benefit as well. Look, I get it. I think there's some logic there. But yeah, those last two games, I think, were what I saw the article specifically referencing. So that scared me off enough where I didn't want to go there. And, I think the Rockies in general just due for some positive regression versus right hand pitching because the numbers don't look bad for the actual hitters. And somebody else in the chat asking about Ramel Tapia. I have no problem with him either. He's got really good power so far versus lefties, versus righties. Small sample size, but yeah, the thing for me, any of the lefties in the lineup going against Fultz, I'm okay with, and that's sort of where I shook out with that. Let's go. We actually somehow have filled this time really well, so we got to go through our last two games now. We talked about the Kershaw and Pittsburgh side of the equation for the most part before, but let's talk about this again. Pittsburgh getting 2.9 implied runs, so obviously a big benefit here for Kershaw. The Dodgers project to have 4.6 runs, so kind of a surprise to me because Musgrove's stuff has been really nasty so far this year. Missing bats as well as anybody on the slate, 13.4% swinging strike rate, 36.6% chase rate, 0.85 whip, just 5.7 hits per nine allowed from Musgrove. You'd say maybe he's due to come back down to earth, but it's not really far off of his numbers going back to last year. So I actually think Musgrove is a slightly interesting play. The price isn't as good as you may want going against the Dodgers, but I think to me, he's sort of a similar play to Syndergaard. I mean, not as good of a pitcher, but I think he does have some good strikeout stuff, or at least on paper has good strikeout stuff. And there is some opportunity here, maybe versus the Dodgers. But that said, I still don't have a ton of him. I do have a ton of Kershaw, as we discussed. I have a handful of hedge stacks going against Kershaw just in case the dam breaks and everything goes south. The Dodgers, some cheap guys at the bottom of the order, I think, are interesting to me because Chris Taylor, somebody mentioned in the chat. Actually, no, I think it's Corey Seager's birthday today. So never mind. It's not Chris Taylor's, but if it's Chris Taylor's birthday, that would be great. And that would make me like him even more. But just a cheap guy who helps you afford some stuff. And that's probably why he'll be 24% owned on DK today. What are you doing here, Emac? The Dodgers stack actually going to have some popularity on it.
I would prefer the Dodgers as a 3-man stack and try to get their lefties, which is going to be relatively easy since the 5 of the first 6 are lefties. But Musgrove, relatively solid, as you mentioned, decent strikeout rate, very good walk rate. So we're probably not going to see some base runners. So that's where you're hoping, maybe we get a home run, bases clearing double, or a 2-run double or something like that from our guys. And we hope that we have all of them that do that. But he doesn't walk a lot of guys. He has close to a 50% ground ball rate over his last 270 lefties faced, only a 30, just shy of a 30% fly ball rate. He only allows a 30% hard hit rate. So, we're hoping that we capture a Peterson, a Bellinger, a Muncy, or the birthday boy getting the home run, I think.
Yeah, that's a fair take to me. I think it's, Musgrove I respect a little more than I think he's getting here from Vegas. To me, this seems like it should be more a low force total. But when that is the case, though, that is sometimes where the pitcher gets blown up. And you could certainly say that Joe Musgrove might be due for a blow-up day just because, as Emac has mentioned on a few streams that we've done in the past, these pitchers sometimes are not going to have the stuff a significant amount of the time that they're pitching. So this could just be a day where he doesn't have it. But based on what we've seen so far this year, I think Musgrove is a good play, and I'd be reluctant to stack up a ton of Dodgers here, even though the prices for some of them are pretty nice. Let's close it out here, Emac, with the Texas and Seattle game. Texas getting 4.1 implied runs in their favor. Seattle getting 4.4. Battle between Mike Leake and Mike Minor. Two guys who you can probably, on this slate, make an argument to roster at pitcher, even though that hurts a little bit. Minor, though, would be the one I would favor out of the two, and I think I might have one lineup with Leake and a handful with Minor because the price works. I do also have a handful of Seattle stacks. Not much in the way of Texas, and I really don't get this ownership on Rougned Odor, who's going to be one of the highest owned plays on the slate at 30% on DK. What are you doing here, Emac? You got some options.
All right, so I wrote up 4 stacks. Sadly, one of them was Chicago going against Ryan Carpenter, so that one got rained out. I'm going to drop this in the chat because I'm assuming if those guys go again tomorrow, that I'll just keep this stack and I'll add in a couple others. But I'm going with Texas tonight. I like Leak. I'm fine with that. Again, I got them at Leak and Minor at 25%. So I said, full disclosure here, we only have 2 games on the late slate. And now that we're down to 6 and I've lost my other stack that I really like, these Texas and Seattle, I'll have Texas and Seattle probably as my number 4 or 5 guys here. But I've said I like Mike Leake as my SP2. But I also have Mike Minor filling out my squads. If you want to target against Leak, the thing that you'll want to remember is that you're better off getting the power hitters as one-offs or pairs in this lineup, particularly, I've already said Gallo's my home run guy, but Nomar Mazara, and then Shin-Soo Choo is also okay. And then I need to go see what that actual lineup ended up being, because I know that Asdrubal Cabrera was a little dinged up. So did he make the lineup? He did not. So, but I think with Odor healthy, you can kind of have him there. So Choo, Odor, and Mazara would be my 3 favorite, along with Gallo. But those guys are spread out across the top 6. I don't feel overly strongly about any of them but Gallo. So it feels better like a 3-man stack here for this one. But when you go against Mike Leake, there's, he's over his last 900 batters faced, he has just a 16% strikeout rate. He's only walking 4.4% of the batters faced. He doesn't allow a lot of fly balls. 31% over those 900 batters. He has a 48% ground ball rate. His strikeouts have ticked up a little bit. I hate to say that that's a change. I think it's probably just getting good sequencing, or getting his pitch when it's somebody's got 2 strikes on them. So I think that'll probably, what do we want to believe? The last 18 months or his whole 12-year career? So
Right.
At least he's not in Great American Ballpark, so that helps him out a little bit. But I do like Texas, particularly the lefties.
Looking at it now, just to echo some of your points. So Leake has, like Emac mentioned, he is striking out guys slightly better, and he has missed bats a little bit better this year. Literally like a fractional amount, 8.1% swinging strike rate so far this season compared to 7.6% going back to last year. The home run rate, though, is really high so far this year, and maybe that's due for some regression the other way. But he's been given up, his fly ball percentage is actually up to 43% this year. Home run rate's up to 6.3% so far this year from 3.4% last year. It's possible he could actually be worse than he's been over a longitudinal period, and that wouldn't surprise me if he's gotten worse. And this Rangers lineup does have some pop. I would say the one caveat I would throw in, the lefty hitters not giving up or not getting as many home runs historically from Leake. He's faced 428 batters going back to last year, and he has a 2.1% home run rate versus lefties compared to a 4.5% one versus righties. So righty power here may be the move. Looking at this now, I kind of wish I had stacked this more, and I'm surprised the Vegas total is so low.
Yeah, it's one of those where I'm kind of going more from fandom and having seen a lot more of Leake's outings to know that he's unlikely to blow up. But it wouldn't shock me if he went 5 innings and gave up 5 runs. How many of them are home runs, though? It's like we talked about this morning. It's you're like, yeah, I killed it. My team that I said to stack had 12 runs and 3 doubles, 1 home run. The pinch hitters got 2 of the RBI, and the pitcher got 1. That's not a very good stack because there's not enough left to go around to everybody else. So it's just one of those where your mileage may vary. But again, I'm fine playing both sides of this one. It's just I have Leake in the category of he doesn't get blown up, and
yeah,
I'm hoping it's my guys that get to him and capture those potential 4 runs and then 1 or 2 off the bullpen, and that's what I'm hoping for here. So it's not a blatant it's Coors Field and it's hot, or it's Atlanta and the humidity is off the charts, or same thing with St. Louis or Baltimore, or lefties in the Yankees against a crappy righty. It's not one of those situations, but have we had one of those tonight that we've talked about? No. Could there be crooked numbers in this game? Yes. Again, back to where I'm going peanut butter with my whole approach tonight.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm surprised I didn't catch this earlier, but Leake's numbers really are pretty bad in a way where I think if you were making your lineups, if right now, obviously a lot of you probably are making your lineups right now. If you're trying to struggle to get through that last handful of lineups and you want to throw some stacks in there that maybe you don't have, I think a full Texas stack here would be a little bit interesting, and or stacking a couple in different ways. That's an approach I didn't get to, which I think is interesting here. But the Vegas total, man, if Mike Leake fans dudes today because he has a 4.1 Vegas total in his favor, I'm going to be a little upset. It's not a bad strikeout spot on paper with this lineup, but this is an interesting test. I'm curious to see how this one turns out. How about the other side here? Mike Minor, a guy who our own Josh Engelman is just touting up a storm right now in the premium Slack. He's saying, Mike Minor is my guy tonight, and I'm straight terrified, says Josh Engelman. So I actually agree with old Joshy here, even though the 4.4 run total is not the best. The Mariners, to me, seem like a team who's really due to regress. And even still, I think they're a team who can get to the Texas bullpen, perhaps, if Mike Minor doesn't give it up too bad. They're the best hitting team versus left-hand pitching, or close to it in the league so far this year. Really strong numbers on base percentage with a 404, ISO of 280 as a team versus lefties, WRC plus, which EMAC mentioned, 163. So I think you said that would be 63% or whatever. It would be a substantial number better than league average. Let's leave it at that. And a 298 batting average. So they've been really good versus lefties. It just doesn't seem sustainable to me. But that said, I do have some stacks here. I do have some Tom Murphy as a one-off. He's been really hitting perhaps outside of his depth so far this year, but he has been hitting like a monster. 417 batting average for Tom Murphy so far this year. Yeah, I don't know. I think Mike Minor's a good play. I don't mind hedging against him a little bit, but I do have a good amount of Minor because on DraftKings, I think he just works. What are you doing with him and with the Seattle side?
So surprisingly, I'm only got 2% Seattle stacks, and I've just completed my 4-4s, which is like literally none. I'm running 150 there, and I only have 17% Minor, which is a little bit of a surprise. So I ended up with 30% Syndergaard, Kershaw, Woodruff, 25% Fulte, 11% Leak, and then 10% Gray, Godley, Darvish, Lopez, Musgrove, and Barria. So I'm back in, and it turns out Kansas City's and LA are my two most popular stacks, the Angels, which I was a little surprised to see. So I'm not entirely sure what to do with that information right now, which is not good because we have 10 minutes left, Chris.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think it's an interesting spot here on both sides, and yeah, I think people in the chat pointing out, for what it's worth, Leak has Adam Burse. For what it's worth, Leak has given up all 8 home runs on the road. Yeah, that's an observation. I think there are some interesting thoughts here about Mike Leak. Rangers are fireworks lately versus Leak. All right, that one not quite as substantive. Yeah, a couple ways to go with that. If you have any questions right now, by the way, drop them in the YouTube chat or the premium Slack. And if you're not on the premium Slack, get on there. Use that promo code LiveBeforeLock for half off your first month on any package. Just get 50% off right away for that first month. So go in there right now. Use promo code LiveBeforeLock in the premium Slack. You could be talking to Josh right now about his Mike Minor pick. So that's the kind of stuff you're missing out on. And how are you even alive if you're missing out on talking to Josh about Mike Minor in the premium Slack right now? So go do that if you want. And look at some questions now. Also hit the like button if you're on YouTube. We didn't pander for likes, but it's Saturday. I'm a sleepy boy. Emacs doing a second show of the day, so help us out. Hit us with a like, please. It does help us out, keep things on the right path here. All right, checking for questions. Cano ? What were Homer picks again? We'll give those one more time. Emac, your home run pick?
Gallo.
Emac going with Joey Gallo. I'm going with David Peralta. So we are both going with some powerful men in that spot who will hopefully come through, because I think Josh got a home run yesterday with Lindor, if I'm remembering correctly, which not my favorite that Josh gets a home run. Yes, he did. He actually got 2 home runs. Oh, no, we got 2 home runs. That is the first double dong of the year for stupid Josh.
Oh, that hurts.
Gross. That's unfair. Oh no, now he's ahead of me. Technically, and he wasn't even on the show, which is nonsense.
Well, then I want to count mine from earlier today.
No, see, this is the rabbit hole that he opened with his nonsensory. We were doing it that way last year, where you could pop into the chat and pick one, but we were doing a gentlemanly thing this year where only the hosts were picking. So
I think you know what? I think if it ends up on the sheet, I think we have to count it.
Look, I
think it should only be the live before lock ones. But if the hosts are in chat and they want to do it, that's fine. Because I'm only on one of these. Or I guess I'm on Sunday, so I'm only on 2 per week. So
true, it's an unfair system all around that Josh is exploiting, as he's known to do. That's why you guys watch his shows. He knows how to exploit the systems as best he can. All right, O'Hearn, people making their picks. I'm telling you, O'Hearn not hitting it very well. Spag, seen you up in the top yesterday. You were on them, or did it just come up in your crunches? I don't use optimizers to make lineups for baseball. I use them to kind of give me my path, and I make stacks by hand. So that was all me with some White Sox and some Nelson Cruz. That was a nice stack. And of course, Mr. Jared Eichhoff, the greatest pitcher in Major League Baseball, better than Max Scherzer, confirmed, DMAC, officially.
That does seem to be the case.
For one night only, if not every other night ever again, but for one night we got him.
You got
all right. Anything Anything under the radar you're getting, EMAC, on your stacks that you want to bring to the public that maybe we didn't discuss in this hour?
I'm feeling uncomfortable with the number or the actual amount that I'm getting here of Brandon Woodruff. So I've saved some lineups here that I'm now going to force in some Mariner stacks as well as some Met stacks for what it's worth.
Here's a question from Rainmaker in the premium Slack. How many Ks would you have John Gray projected for? I just use Osmos projections.
Yeah, whatever we have projected from Osmo is what I have.
Yeah, that would be. Let me look at.
And we don't. I guess we don't display it, to be fair. So that does make it a little tougher.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have the number for you, but it's part of the secret sauce that goes into those, Rainmaker.
Yeah. Who is it? I'm sorry, because I'll give an actual answer. Who was it? John Gray.
Oh, it's Rainmaker in the premium Slack.
But what tag? Was it Gray?
Oh yeah, for Gray. Yes. Sorry.
I would say probably 5 or 6.
Okay. All right. Looking at the YouTube chat for questions. People still talking about O'Hearn, Pujols, or Daniel Murphy. Couple first basemen, and one of which we talked about earlier.
Daniel Murphy.
I would also go Daniel Murphy. He's got to get back in the lineup and get a little healthier, but I think he's in a nice spot. What do you think is Woodruff as your only pitcher on FanDuel? I would say that's a no for me.
Well, I just said I was terrified, and he's on 30% of my lineups here on DK. So, yeah, I would be really terrified on FanDuel.
And that's, a 2-pitcher site. On a 1-pitcher site, I do not think Woodruff is the guy that you want to go to personally. But, yeah, no. I mean, you could make an argument he may be due to get a little better because he is striking out 10.9 guys per 9, and the xFIP of 3.81, actually not that bad considering how hard he's gotten hit. The hard contact has been really hard. 50.7% hard contact is the highest on the slate. So, yeah, I don't like guys giving up a lot of hard contact unless there's some other reason to go there. Let's see, how many Ks will Kershaw get? 10?
7.
27? You say 6?
7.
7. Okay, that's a good number. It's not. I would take that from Kershaw. He gives me 7 innings, 7 strikeouts.
Oh gosh, these are some terrifying lineups.
How much Kershaw did you land up on?
I capped him at 30, and that's where I stayed.
Okay, that's fair. Murphy kills Fulte. Not a BVP spot, but I think, as I mentioned before, I do like the lefties going against Fulte more. So that would be my approach. BVP, we generally try to advocate against because it's not super predictable, but the lefty-righty matchup thing is something that tends to be predictable across the board. Home run call, Tapia. Yep, Brett Murphy, same thing. Go lefties against Fulte. Not a problem. Seager, a good dong call on his birthday. EMAC, what do you think's strong here? Corey Seager's lack of power or his birthday?
I had misremembered Seager I thought he had 2, maybe even 3 home run games. I went and looked that up. It was only 1, but he does have I think 4, counting that 1 3 home run game, multi-home run games in his career. So that's pretty impressive considering he missed the bulk of last night. But Musgrove doesn't give up home runs, and he's a pretty good pitcher. But it is a birthday, so we're gonna have to party like it's your birthday.
So you gotta weigh both factors. Musgrove's a pretty good pitcher, and Seager's ISO like a 150, but it's his birthday. So if you think about it, it does kind of level out. It all comes out in the wash.
All right. What year did 50 Cent in the Club come out?
Ooh, I was towards the end of high school for me. So 2001.
I'm going to Wiki here. What does Wiki say? 2002. It was recorded. It was released in January 2003.
You know what? I'll take that. That was close enough. I remember pushing it or playing that song when I was pushing a Toyota Echo Whip back in the day. My shitty car that my mom made me buy out of college. But 50 Cent, very popular at the time. Nothing like being a light-skinned fella driving down the street with your windows down in your Toyota Echo, blaring 50 Cent.
Were you rolling down the street, smoking, sipping on gin and juice, laid back, with your mind on your money and your money on your mind?
It was when I was in the Bronx, so even more. I Yeah, I grew up in the South Bronx. We were the last Italian family left in our neighborhood, and that was in fact where I drove and blared my 50 cents. It was very on brand for the neighborhood, perhaps not for me specifically. Though I did wear FUBU at that point, so.
Oh boy.
Here we go. Brett Murphy likes Yahoo so far. Took second in the $10 my first time playing Thursday. Thanks for the advice. Thanks for watching, Brett Murphy, and of course tune in for the Friday Yahoo show that Josh does. And Emac sometimes does as well. We've been doing some good job with the Yahoo content.
Did you ever go downtown to 129th Street?
Is that a reference to something?
If you're ever in a fight and you're beating one of us, break out before you get bum rushed.
I don't know what song this is.
It's the Wild Wild West. Cool Modi.
Oh, okay. Now we're going classic. It's the irony
that was oh god, mate. I was in high school, I think then, probably a sophomore or junior. But that was old school. That was back with and I'm saying this because we're 30 seconds away from a lock. That was Yo MTV Raps, Fab Five Freddy. I lived in a tiny little sheltered town of 2,500 people in the middle of the state of Washington, as Apple capital of the world. And we did not really have pop radio. So when MTV came on, I actually sat there and watched the first video on MTV back in 1981 when it came on. So for 3 weeks, they had this white screen that said music television coming to you. And then the date. So we and the time it was going to launch. So my brother and I were like, what is this? And that was back when you had cable boxes that had levers on the side and you had to push the channel because it was an actual button. Yeah, there was no remote control.
Hey, you had to earn it back then. That's one fun fact is we'll never talk about Fab Five Freddy on any piece of content we ever do on this channel again. You know, he's responsible for bringing hip hop to the mainstream because he was hooking up or at least working with Blondie, but I think the implication was they were perhaps coital partners. And she did a rap song where she rapped and like it was one of her songs. Yeah, that's
she
it.
even says Fab Five Freddy is one of the
Fab Five Freddy told me everybody's fly. DJ spinning me out of my mind. Yeah, that's what I learned at USC at our hip hop class. But Blondie, one of the key figures in mainstreaming rap, legitimately, which is strange and a fun fact about hip hop.
What about Sugar Hill Gang?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, they're a song too, but I mean, like the thing though was that it was like underground, like subway culture stuff before then. And then Blondie was like the first, like, I think like white person to be like, hey, like this is other than the guy who did the rap in Duke, the John Wayne ripoff. I think for the most part, white people were not doing rap stuff and not paying attention to it. And she was
Rob Van Winkle. You may know him better as Vanilla Ice.
A powerful contractor now. He's doing a lot of work. How is Avengers, Spags? Avengers was one of the best film experiences I've ever had. Actually, free plug for myself. You want to go download my podcast, the Untitled Chris Spags podcast on Apple Podcasts. I go into both a spoiler-free and an in-depth spoiler-filled review because I think it's one of the cinematic works of a generation. The fact somebody could tell a story over 12 years and have it pay off as that movie does, I think is well worth the price of admission, especially if you've watched all the Marvel movies. Emac, you a Marvel guy?
So no, I'm not. But here, let's finish this story out real quick, and then we got to go set our basketball lineups. So
yes.
No, not really a fan of superheroes. Not really a fan of comic books. Really, the only superhero ones I saw were Christopher Reeves, Superman, way back in the day, and then Batman, Michael Keaton. That's really it. Could care less. Never saw the Spider-Man reboots. Didn't give a shit about the Hulk. None of that. But I've watched more on YouTube of the X-Men and X-Men Origins and Wolverines and all that stuff, and I think that's hilarious and great. I've sat through one full movie. It was X-Men Future Days Past, which was so confusing. Okay. I was on a plane. I had no idea what was going on. And then I've watched a little bit of the Captain America, but I've never sat through a whole thing. But I heard you say the same thing on the show the other night, but I've literally watched every good clip that's out there. So I've seen all the highlights and I know the stories and I think they're fascinating. I can just never sit through a whole movie. When you said it's worth it watching all of them because they do tie in together, I now want to go back and watch Iron Man and all the Captain Americas and Winter Soldier and Civil War and all these things that really don't make sense to me, but I'm aware of. I want to go see them now because apparently the guy I don't like, nobody else liked it, as best I can tell, Hawkeye. Apparently he plays a large role in this one.
Oh, yes.
That may not be the payoff I wanted, though. Damn it. Because I don't really like Jeremy Renner.
Yeah,
there we go. But at Wind River, one hell of a movie. If you have not seen Wind River, you have to see it.
it's well-crafted cinema. That's all I could say. Like the ambition of that project and doing it, like, I think it's anytime you could pay something off like that and have it be like a real experience, like that's what the movie was to me. Like it was an experience. It wasn't, I don't know, it's the most rewatchable thing. It's 3 hours long. It's like a little bit much, but you invest the time and you get the results. And I feel like I admire anybody creatively who can do that. So go check out that movie if you've watched any of them, or if you haven't, you do like EMAC, go and binge watch 48 hours straight. You got it.
We'll see. I'm fascinated by it because it kept going. I kept waiting for it's going to be like Spider-Man or Hulk where they reboot it all the time, so they hang on to the rights to whomever they license it from. And Fantastic Four. I mean, there's some crappy movies. What is the Devil Rider, the Nick Cage one where he's a motorcycle
Ghost
guy.
Rider. Yeah, that was
there's
a previous
crappy movies. This one seems interesting, as does Aquaman. I forget his name, but Jason Momoa. I don't like that he shaved his beard, but he is pretty cool as Aquaman. So I want to see that movie as well. Yeah, and I'm someone who hates this shit. Hates it. And to me, it's like, wow, they've done some really good work here, and I appreciate that. So I want it. Now that I know that I have 48 hours worth of movie Spags, I'm reinvigorated.
Yeah, look, it's our American Greek mythology, so I would say bask in it as much as you can. Yeah. And if speaking of basking in it, you basked in this hour, so please hit the like button on the way out. Thank you guys for watching. EMAC, you're on tomorrow doing what?
Tomorrow, it's going to be Josh and myself. We're negotiating the time. He wants to go early, but I don't want us to have to do 2 shows, so it'll be somewhere between. We'll kick off somewhere between 9:30 if he gets his way, or 11 if I get my way. So TBD, but we'll make sure to get that posted, and we'll go through all the games on the main slate, which I think there are 12 tomorrow or 11. So it's relatively sizable. So we'll hit all those game by game on that one.
All right, so go keep your eyes peeled for EMAC tomorrow. Hit that notification bell and subscribe button on the YouTube channel so you'll know whenever they go live tomorrow. I'll be back on Monday with stuff, but wish you guys a good rest of your weekend and good luck tonight.
Later.